Welcome back. Happy Inauguration Day. This is Immune System Day 2, and today's aim is how does the immune system maintain homeostasis? But before we get into that, you guys have got one do not question, so go ahead and pause this video, answer question number 1, and press play when you're ready to review it. All right, number 1. The diagram below shows a cell in the human body engulfing a bacterial cell. So when we see this word engulfing, that's just another way of saying eating. So we see that this cell is actually eating a bacterial cell. Now, if you remember from yesterday, we talked about a type of cell called a macrophage that does this. And a macrophage is a type of white blood cell. So white blood cells help us with immunity. And one of the ways they do that is by eating any sort of invader that comes into our body. All right. Now, numbers 2 and 3 are not actually on your paper, but I'm still going to review them if you want to jot it down on your paper or on your notes. All right, number 2, what is the function of white blood cells? Well, we just looked at an example of this where the white blood cell is going to eat the invader. Okay, so the overall function of white blood cells is to help us with immunity. It's going to aid the immune system to fight pathogens that try to break into your body. But red blood cells are a little bit different. So red blood cells are going to aid in the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide with something called hemoglobin. Remember, this is that protein that makes your blood the color red. It's the red protein that is going to allow oxygen and carbon dioxide to bond and be transported throughout the body. Okay. Now, the first thing we are going to do today, you may notice that on your paper there is a link to another video. I'm also going to link it below this YouTube video. So what I want you guys to do right now is actually pause me. Go and watch this video, answer questions 1 through 5, and come back to me when you are ready to review them. Okay. So if you're still here, I'm going to assume you've already watched that video and you are here to review your answers. So let's get to it. Number 1, what are the major types of germs? Well, there were 4 mentioned in that video. We talked about viruses, fungi, parasites, and bacteria. Those are all examples of germs that are trying to break into your body and really just hijack your well-being. But thankfully, our immune system is there to protect us from most of these things. Which leads us to number 2. What is a vaccine? Now, you may have heard this term being thrown around a lot, especially with COVID vaccines being distributed. So what is a vaccine? Well, these are immunizations that help prevent illnesses. So after you're vaccinated, your body is more protected. Now, up until this point, we've known vaccines as containing dead or weakened strains of pathogens. So when you go and get a flu shot, that's going to contain dead or weakened strains of whatever causes the flu that year. But there's something new on the rise that I'm really excited about. And this is something called an mRNA vaccine, which is actually what the COVID-19 vaccine is. Okay. And with these new mRNA vaccines, they actually don't contain any virus. They just contain the mRNA, which is basically the the instructions needed to protect you from COVID-19 should you ever come in contact with it. So it doesn't actually contain any form of COVID-19. It just has the instructions to prepare your body, which is super cool. So I'm going to write that above mRNA, just write instructions. But for the purpose of the regents, most questions you come into contact with about vaccines are going to mention this phrase, dead or weakened strains of pathogens. Okay. Now, number 3, what are the functions of the 2 types of cells involved in the immune system? So there were 2 that were mentioned in that video. First one is called lymphocytes. Now, whenever you see this phrase or this suffix cytes, that's talking about cells. So both of these lymphocytes and phagocytes are both types of cells. But what exactly is a lymphocyte? Well, it's just a fancy way of saying white blood cells. So lymphocytes are white blood cells. And specifically, they're going to recognize and destroy pathogens. Again, they function in immunity and help protect us from those pathogens. So they are going to recognize and destroy them. Okay. The second type of cell mentioned is called phagocytes. And phagocytes are actually going to consume or eat invaders and thus kill them. So again, phagocytes and lymphocytes are both types of cells involved in the immune system to protect us. Number 4, why is your neck often swollen when you are sick? So you may have noticed this before. Whenever you are sick, sometimes your neck right alongside right here is going to be swollen. And that is because that is where your lymph nodes are found. So your lymph nodes are filled with all sorts of immune cells working overtime to fight that infection in your body and help you get better faster. So the next time you're sick, I want you to check that out. See if you notice that your lymph nodes are swollen right here, or sometimes underneath your armpit, you'll have some swelling there as well. And number 5, why do you often sleep more when you are sick? Well, this is because your body is working really hard to get you well again, and it needs you to rest and preserve your energy for all of the fights that are going on inside of you. So you want to rest, use fewer calories, and make sure that all of your energy is being used by your immune system to help make you better. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to do, yesterday we mentioned briefly memory B cells and T cells, but today I want to learn a little bit more about the specifics behind them. So we're going to read this passage. I want you guys to follow along with me as I read it with you, make any important annotations, and then use that information to answer the question below. So let's get started. The immune system includes B cells and T cells, special kinds of white blood cells that are produced in the bone marrow, the thymus gland, the spleen, the lymph nodes, and the tonsils. B cells are the cells that respond to specific antigens by beginning to produce antibody proteins that will bind only with that antigen. Now, remember, when we see this phrase specific antigens, we're talking about a specific immune response. There are specific antibodies made for specific antigens. So the response is going to be different for every type of pathogen. It's going to be unique. Okay, as time goes on, the body comes to have different types of B cells, each producing antibodies for one specific antigen. After having been invaded once by an antigen, some special B cells that recognize that antigen remain in the body for the rest of one's life. These are called memory B cells because they are already present in the body and begin making antibodies the moment they encounter that same invading microorganism again. That is why individuals usually do not get measles or chickenpox a second time. The immune system remembers the first exposure to the disease and is ready to defend the body. One type of T cell is called killer T cells. I bet you can guess what they do. Through protein receptors on the surface, they can recognize cells in the body that have been infected with invading microorganisms. The killer T cells punch holes in the membranes of the infected cells, sometimes injecting poison into them. Another type of T cell called helper T cells assists both B cells and killer T cells. Without helper T cells, the other members of the immune system cannot do their job. The importance of helper T cells is shown by the fact that they are the cells that are destroyed by the human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV, which sometimes results in the disease AIDS. So each one of these cells is super, super important. And if one of them isn't working, you're going to have some trouble. Okay. Now, using that information, I want you guys to tell me, how does the body identify a pathogen and mark it for destruction? So go ahead and pause this video, write down your guess, and then I'll tell you what I got as soon as you are done. Right now, I attempted to make this simplify this to make it as easy as possible to remember. Now, the actual process behind this is a lot more complicated, okay? But to help you out, I just want you to remember this. B cells are going to tag the pathogen's antigens with antibodies, and T cells are going to recognize those antibodies and attack. Remember, the killer T cells are going to attack. So again, B cells are going to almost get the attention of T cells. Be like, hey, 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 it's over here. Come on, come on. They're going to bring the T cells over, who then kill the pathogen and help you survive. Okay, so B cells tag those antigens with antibodies. T cells come over and kill the pathogen. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is organ transplants. Okay, so again, I'm going to read through this passage. We'll use that information to answer the following question. Although the killer T cells are helpful in the immune system, they make the acceptance of organ transplants difficult. Body cells have marker proteins on their surface that allows the immune system to recognize the cells. If an organ was going to be transplanted into your body, your immune system would recognize the transplanted organ, and it would actually start to attack that organ. Okay? Because it thinks that that organ is an invader. It thinks it's a pathogen trying to hurt you. This process is known as organ rejection. To prevent organ rejection, doctors search for a donor whose cell markers are nearly identical to the cell markers of the recipient. Recipients must take drugs usually for the rest of their lives, to suppress the cell-mediated immune response. So now using that information, tell me, why do some organ transplants fail? Again, pause this video, answer that on your own, and then press play when you are ready to review it. Okay, so why do some organ transplants fail? Why do we have organ rejection? That is because the host's immune system is going to begin to attack the foreign cells of that donated organ if it does not have identical cell markers. So again, your immune system is really good at protecting you, but it is going to attack anything that does not have your identical cell markers. So if you have an organ transplant, it's going to think that that is attacking you. So that's why it's super important that the donor organ be almost identical to the host organ so that your immune system does not attack it. All right, using that information, I want you guys to go ahead and answer your exit ticket questions. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I will see you guys tomorrow.